Oh, hello. Uh, we're going to be talking about the challenges of a startup journey, and we are very excited to hear all about your own journey and Jobbatical, was it called?
It's okay. I will take over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Uh,
so I will instead of giving an intro, I think my story will be part of the introduction as well. So first of all, thank you for inviting, and I must say first I have to lay out the awkward setup that we have here because I'm right now actually on the third day of a fast, so I haven't eaten since Sunday. I'm somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Turkey, and since I just did some video calls in a quiet room today, which didn't work that well, then the best room for this to work was quite crowded. So now I'm above that best room. So you see, that's where the internet is the best. So I'm in a meditation room right now. The table is a towel basket, and I think that's part of like an example how building a company you need to constantly adapt to new environment and challenges. And so let's bear with me. My energy level is not the highest today, but let's not talk about food. I my kind ask, but everything else we can talk about. So yes, my name is Karoli. I'm the founder of Jobbatical, and I must say, coming to this call today, I felt anxious, and I didn't feel anxious because I'm anxious of public speaking because I do it all the time. I even did the TED Talk last year in America on the main stage, and that was a scary stage to wait for your talk. And I have had the biggest accident that you can have, the biggest, like the worst situation on the stage that you can imagine. And funny thing, that happened in Kiev. So if you later want, I will tell you that story as well. So I wasn't anxious about public speaking because I have done that and seen the worst. But what I was anxious was that even though I myself, I haven't seen war, but I do remember so clearly. Okay. From my small hometown, Pärnu in Estonia, what it felt to see tanks passing your house. So just like many of you or your parents, I also remember what it felt or what it was like to live in the darkness behind the Iron Curtain without freedom. And I have not jokingly, but like I have said, looking at the populist discussions we have had in the past years, that people talk about freedom, people who don't know what it means, what freedom even means, because it's like somebody who has never been hungry cannot really talk about hunger. So I hope my story, and this is what I came to talk about, my coach Ariane asked me to share my story. I hope my story will give you some inspiration for resilience, for optimism, and courage, because you need a lot of that to overcome a lot of challenges building companies. So I will share my story and stories, and what I would suggest, and sorry for getting teary, but I do get teary very easily. My team all over the world knows that I joke and tell them that even Steve Jobs cried, so get used to it. I would love this to be like a discussion. So let's not leave the questions to the end. If you have a question, shout, put it in the chat or raise your hand. If I don't notice the chat question, then Zaina, I will ask you to jump in and just share the question. So let's have it more like a conversation rather than a monologue. But I will start my story quite early because yes, I think I've had the privilege to, in a way, grow with Estonia. So when I was 6 years old, I was standing in the chain across the Baltic. There was 2 million people holding hand to hand from Tallinn to Vilnius. And that was still the days where everything was dark. And it was just when I became this youth, Estonia got independent. And my story as an entrepreneur actually started when I was 16. And it was very accidental. And I mean, I was 16 years old, it was 98. So it was 4 years after the Russian tanks left Estonia, only 4 years. Estonia was still one of the poorest countries in the world. But what happened and how my entrepreneurial journey started was that in school, so I was in a small school in Pärnu near the Latvian border, and it was October, and we got the task to do a student company. Completely random. I had no plans of becoming an entrepreneur, but we had to do a student company. And how this worked was that let's choose a president. Of course, when you create a company, you first choose who's the boss, and then let's start to figure out what we're going to do. So we had a voting, and I was selected to be the president. I got so excited about that. Oh my God, I'm the president of something. And so we started to brainstorm what our company will be doing. And long story short, I had this idea. Of creating fashionable soft reflectors. So something accessory that looks cool during daytime and saves your life during nighttime. And I went home, and that was the moment that actually I would say that if that conversation would not have happened, it's likely that I would not be here today. I went home and I shared this idea with my dad. And he could have told me, forget about it. You're a girl in Eastern Europe, in a small town, average student, go and study, forget about your silly ideas. But what he told me was that this is such a great idea. Why don't you go to the patent office? I had never heard of what a patent office is, but what I did get was that my dad was excited about my idea. So I did go to the patent office. I found out what it was. They were as surprised as my father was about my good idea. And long story short, I became the youngest inventor in Estonia, which accidentally was really good for marketing. So suddenly I was building a company, initially a student company, but that actually became my first venture. So we sold reflectors across Northern Europe, and even we had some clients in Portugal. But I must say that with this company, I made the biggest mistakes as well. So I call it my Harvard. But what I love about this experience was that when I started as an entrepreneur, Estonia was completely in like a toddler. Nobody was talking about entrepreneurship. There were no startups. I don't know if the word was even invented. It was a poor country trying to figure out how to be independent. And within this 20 years, fast forward to today, it is per capita in Europe, most unicorns in all Europe, right? Everybody's talking about Estonia, but this was not, it was a constant figuring out, testing, experimenting mentality that really helped us to get there. But let's go back. So I started my first company, and after that, I actually was in television. So I built up 7 TV channels across the Baltic states, first MTV, later National Geographic, and Fox Entertainment channels. But after this brought me to this venture that I'm building, the tech company that I'm building today. And I would love to share that story, because from this, from the Jobbatical journey, I have gotten the biggest learnings about being a leader, about hiring, about figuring out what is the right thing to do. And so if you may, then I would take you to that journey. And if you want, we can later go back to television reflector company, but I would jump a little bit, almost 20 years ahead, and get to Jobbatical. Is that okay? Okay. So Jobbatical, I will start from the founding story. So why I even started this company. And this story started when I I was chosen to Singularity University, which was a really cool think tank in Mountain View and located in NASA Ames Research Center. And so I went there for 3 months for the summer. And as a runner in the mornings, I used to, basically I went out and ran to the seaside. And while I was running there, I always passed Google. Passing Google, you think about, why are Googles of the world here? Like, Google is so amazing, but why is Google here? And why is all the other Googles here? Like, what's going on in this part of the world, in this region? And I started to actually look into it. Is it true that it's just people are somehow smarter? Is the education better? Like, what's up with this place? And what I learned was that it's not that people are just born smarter, it's that smart people circle the globe to actually get there. So coming from a tiny country, I started to ask the question, what do we have to do to get those people who are circling the world to go to Silicon Valley? What do we have to go do to get them to places like, Tallinn, Helsinki, the far-flung cities of the world where people go and take pictures of the local beautiful landmark and then go to their cruise ship or plane and leave? So how could we actually inspire them to go and help to build the next Googles there? So that was my question, and the first thesis that I had, that in order to have that impact, we need to build first a community, find those smart people who want to move, right? Who are ready to sit on a plane and go somewhere. And then find those locations and founders in those locations and start to basically lure them and introduce them their visions to those highly skilled people. So we started as a cross-border recruitment platform. So what it meant was that you open the computer and it was kind of like inspiring. Instead of Airbnb homes, it was like inspiring jobs. You could work in a tropical island, you could work in Japan, you could work in this company in the Alps of Austria, right? And now what happened, and this is, I think, one of the first mistakes, if I look back when starting Jobbatical, I did, was that I had an idea and we started to build a platform around idea. Never do that. When you have an idea, it first has to work on the paper. It really has to work in Excel before you start building. So we built this platform. We put a lot of, I found the co-founders, I found the first angel investors, and I'm really good at convincing people to fund us. That I learned pretty fast. And so happy to hear questions and give you tips about that. But so I got the funding, we were building something. The question, and we actually did move, like people were hired from 52 countries to 37 countries, but in real life, it was not working. Like it was not working. We put a lot of money into something that was not working. But this part was not working, but we started to understand what the actual problem was. So what our clients started to show us is that the problem for them in international hiring, somebody had a question? Oh, okay. The problem for them in international hiring is not actually the hiring. They can get those people, but they cannot get those people in. So suddenly putting a lot of resource into this recruitment platform and technology, which was not working very well, we started to have a side business, relocating people, doing the immigration, doing the paperwork, helping those people to actually get into those countries. And in 2019, and that was 4 years after we had been building something, we had put 8 million euros into that investors' money. In summer of 2019, we decided to pivot the company. And what it meant was that completely throw into the garbage the whole thing that we had been building, the initial idea, initial thesis. I remember the board meeting. I went to those investors who had helped us to build this 4 years of something and saying that now we're going to throw this away and starting from the scratch to build something completely new. But the decision then, it was very data driven. It was clear that this thing that we have in Excel is basically has a hockey stick, almost a hockey stick. Today we have a hockey stick. But this thing is not working. So we either continue and we will die, or we will now take this risk and we will start from the scratch. So 2019, and this is, I think, one of the things, I don't know how many of you, so if you have ever had to lay off people, say yes in chat. How many of you have laid off people? Okay, yes, that's the worst situation to have, firing people is hard, but laying off is not their fault. This is your fault. This is on you. You made a bad decision with a strategy, right? So one of the things, if I'm kind of now recap, because I laid off during Jobbatical twice, and the first time really badly, and the second time I was lucky to have Patty McCord, who was previously the head of people of Netflix, and they did quite a lot of turnarounds in Netflix. I accidentally spoke on the same stage with her in Canada, and she became my mentor. And I told Patty, now I have to turn around the company and I need your help. And she was the one who really advised me. And one of the things that she told me is that you have to talk to each and every person, look in the eyes, tell them exactly that this is not their fault. This is why you're doing, that they understand exactly what you're doing, why you're doing. And I must say that this pivot, and I mean, the pivot is just the start of the change story, because there's a lot of things that happened ahead. But if I may kind of give back, that when you have to make such a change in your company, where you have to lay off people, then the founder, the CEO has to take and own every conversation. Don't let your managers, your colleagues do it. Own each and every of that conversation. And thanks to that, in many ways, because with a turnaround, what you can happen is that even if the decision that you're making is right, it's the correct one, right? And for us, it was definitely the correct one. But if you're laying off people incorrectly, you will completely take away the motivation for everyone else who will stay in the company, which means even if the change is correct, then the actual execution may suffer significantly if you make it in the wrong way. But thanks to the fact, again, like what Patty advised me and how she helped me to think through how we're actually executing the change, some of the people that we laid off actually continued coming to our all hands, shared, were happy, understood why we're doing, and that helped for us to move super fast. So we had almost no money. We had to build something up within like 3-4 months in order to start another fundraise. And thanks to the fact that this time I really, with my team, managed to turn around it well, we moved super fast. And now think about the industry that we're in, like tech, relocation technology. People are moving across borders. What happened 7 months after 2019 summer? Yeah, so 7 months later, I was just like literally, I had an investment committee in London on Tuesday after 2 months of closing with that investor. And on Monday, Europe went to lockdown. After that, saying the word immigration and relocation, like it was basically the antidote. Like you'd say that word to an investor, they just ran away, literally. And now that was a place of change. And I think I learned so much from Ariane, my coach, who invited me here, who is now in this call as well. She saw me throughout this whole journey. And I remember that March 2020, when the whole fundraise just collapsed. And back then, I think I had around 35 people working for me in different countries. And we had about 2 weeks of runway. And no investor was picking up the phone because like nobody wanted to hear about moving people across borders when the borders are closed. And I remember that, and that's something that Ariane actually told me, that talked about change muscle. And I did, and I stepped in front of the team and I said that, you know what, we did a huge change in the summer. This change was preparing us for this change that we are now going through. And every week I reminded them that the companies who are good at change are going to come out of it. And so this kept, and I must say, looking back then, it was, I mean, it was so hard and it was so crazy that I was quite sure that we cannot survive this. It was July 2020 when one of my board members told that if Jobbatical survived this, it means that this is part of a huge, much bigger trend that we anticipated. But anyway, so we managed to get funding, and some of the decisions that we made because of the pandemic, because of the hard situation that we were, are the reason why today we're growing. First of all, we have the most scalable technology in our industry. We would not have had that if with my team, we would not have made those decisions. So it just reminded me so well. That's something that Ariane repeats to me as well. everything is for our growth. And it's such a, for me, it's such a sentiment of this, that the team, by first of all, making them understand that change is not something that happens sometimes. This is something that happens every week. Every week you have to be able to adapt. This is part of our DNA. It's almost our middle name. If we are not good at change, we cannot come out of it. And fast forward, I mean, let's fast forward a little bit later, but so within that 12 months, so March 2020 to March 2021, we ran out of money 4 times almost. The closest was 2 days before bankruptcy, March 2021. After that, Ariane told me, Karoli, you need to go on a trip, on a holiday. But what I, again, like things can be sometimes so extremely, and I must say that even like the 2019, when I turned around the company, it's not only as a founder, as a CEO, it's not only your professional life, you also have a personal life, right? And in 2019 summer, I divorced, turned around my company, laid off 1/3 of the company, and I bought a new home within 6 weeks. You know, so sometimes things seem super hard, super impossible, but looking back, a lot of those things are actually for our growth. And I must say that if I would not have had those experiences, which I think have made us as a team much more humble, much more frugal for sure. What we have been able to do with so little resource is like, if we would have had tens of millions of euros, we would not have had to learn that. But today we have learned that. And so what I'm just saying is that that what I've learned through that is the hardest situations, even though they are hard and it's not making it easier, you just know that there's something that will come after this, where you look back and you understand why this happened. As Steve Jobs said, that dots connect when looking back, right? They do connect when looking back. And so today we are now across, so we are across 17 different countries. We are growing insanely fast. And there are a few things that I wanted to share. And now, since you have questions and I didn't, are there any questions, by the way? Because now I'm still, because I was teary before, my nose is still ready. So I will mute myself and you figure out if you want to ask.
No, there are no questions so far. I will let
Okay.
you start.
Okay, so there are, what I thought about kind of what the Jobbatical journey has taught me. So there are a few stories that I wanted to share. And one of them was, I think, the hardest lesson for me as a leader, which actually became the best lesson for me as a leader. And maybe that will help to trigger something for you as well, and inspire something about your leadership. And that happened, so in 2018, when we had one person, head of people, came just for a year from America, who was super experienced. She had Google background, Evernote background, and she came to us to help to build this huge recruitment, and we were a recruitment platform that is helping people to go from one country to another. And she was doing all those anonymous surveys, right? And there was an anonymous survey, and then come results, and she asked me and my co-founder, who's my brother, to have lunch to talk about the survey. And one of the questions that she had asked people is, who are the people in the company that you have hard time working with? And so many people said it's Karoli. It's like, I listen to that and I think, oh my God, I mean, like, I'm the CEO of the company and people say they have hard time working with me. So there were 2 options that I could do in that situation. One would be just get really angry and say, screw you, I have what I have. Or to really look in the mirror. And I really took a deep dive understanding where this is coming from. And I realized and I completely understood where it's coming from. I had been building companies since I was 16. I was a hustler, hands-on, mostly alone. And I realized looking back that even when I was building the TV channels, I was part of everything. My hands were in everything. So literally what it meant was I was micromanaging everyone. I thought I cared, but actually I didn't trust. So I stood in front of the team and I told them that, I now see it. I see where this feedback is coming from. And there are two options. Either I continue, I just take it and continue the same, or you will help me to change. And change is hard because bad habits, have bad habit. It's really hard to get rid of bad habits. So I told them that in order for me to change, we have to agree that you will give me brutally honest feedback. When you see me doing that, or you see me kind of taking your power away or not trusting you, then you tell me, because that's the only way for me to see what I'm doing. And that very much created the foundation where I think today, and I truly see people love working in our company, is that we have a very, very strong feedback culture. I even tell the new recruits that if there's one thing that I hope you will take from our company when you go to your next journey, is that the ability to take and give feedback. Because if you are able to do that, you grow as a human. If you are able to grow as a human, then we can grow as an organization. It's like this gives the constant flow of growth. And that would not have happened if my team would not have given me this that time anonymous. Today they don't give anonymous, they just tell me. I have my Spanish head of sales can literally call me and say that I completely did not agree with you at the all hands. People feel that there's trust and freedom to do that. Back then it wasn't there and we had to build it. But what helped to build it was the feedback culture. So I think, like, for me, one of the biggest things that I would love to give to you is that building such culture where people have the freedom to receive and give feedback. And this is not easy. It sounds easy, but it's not easy, because always with feedback has to be very specific. Because if I tell Zaina that amazing presentation, I loved your presentation, then she has no idea what she has to repeat next time, right? Or if I tell you your presentation sucked, you also don't have no clue what you have to change next time. So it's always, when you want to build the culture of feedback, then you have to teach people to give and receive feedback. And it has to be specific, both good and bad. So that was one of the things that really taught me as a leader. I saw that there now were questions. Okay. So you want to understand why the initial idea of Jobbatical failed. First of all, I think there was the, if you know the podcast Masters of Scale, then Reid Hoffman, then the first episode is with Brian Shelsky, Airbnb founder. And I wish I would have listened to that when I started Jobbatical, because it tells me exactly the story that why that idea failed. So one was that we started to build, which I mentioned earlier, we started to build my idea instead of actually testing it out real time. Is my thesis correct? Does this actually work? Is there a client? Is there a need? Is there a solution that actually meets that need? And I think the biggest thing that I learned from that is that, so when you build a startup, then you need to have you want to have a painkiller as your product. Jobbatical first version was a vitamin. Vitamin is that, you use it. Yeah, it's nice if it helps you once, but you don't really need it. Painkiller is something you need. And today, what we're doing is a painkiller. Getting people into the country is such a huge pain. We're making it so much easier. We use technology to make it also cheaper. So it's like a no-brainer. Experience is better, cheaper, and I don't have to think about it. They think about it. So did that answer your question?
Yes, okay.
Okay, so what was the point where you finally decided to pivot? Okay, so fun fact, and I will share it here. Let's not share it outside this chat, but the fun fact was one of the first people in 2018 autumn I was pitching to Ashton Kutcher, and I was pitching the old Jobbatical, and then he told me that forget about this recruiting, because I also mentioned that we have the side business, and he said, forget about this. You should do immigration. So he actually saw it 8 months before I actually finally saw it. What made us to pivot was that, so when I looked at with my team, the first 2 quarters of 2019, then 93% of our cost base was in the recruiting. So basically a lot of money was lost in the recruiting, but 40% of our revenue came from this business that took only 7% of our resource. So it was clear that, you know, with this small money, we are doing 40% of revenue. So there's something there. And the other one is just basically dragging. It's just wasting our money. Did that answer?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Sounds
okay. So that was any other questions regarding this? I'm happy because like the pivot thing is, I must say, as a founder, you had a question? Somebody?
Yeah. If possible, I have another question. I know from my experience, and it keeps being. I mean, of course, it's improving, but still, it's interesting to hear how you made your people giving a feedback more easily, because in every group of people, there are always some that will more or less freely tell you things and what they think, but there are many others then maybe even only anonymously can write something, even not say, but write something. But you're saying this feedback culture is one of your strengths in a company now. So what was the path? I mean, maybe there was some trainings or other kind of things, or how you did that?
Good question. Super good question. And I think one of the bases of that is that failure has to be okay. You have to, like what we, so if you allow people to fail and you say that, and you publicly also embrace failure, you say that this happened, it's so good, look what we learned from it. Because people are afraid often to give any kind of feedback is because they feel that they might be punished. If you take that away and you give them trust, and I think that's one of the things that I also hear. I have skip level meetings. By the way, this is a super good meeting. If it's basically a meeting that you have with a team without their team lead, and there you ask those questions. What is great, and so the skip level meeting has helped me to get a lot of insights about how people are feeling, what their concerns are. And so one of the things that they say is that they really feel trusted. So when you feel trusted and you feel that it's okay to fail, it's okay to make mistakes, then you start to give feedback much more easily. Another thing I constantly quote also Reed Hastings, Netflix's CEO, who says in Netflix that it is your, basically you are not loyal to your company if you don't give feedback. If we could learn something through your feedback that would improve us, and you don't say that, you're actually being disloyal to your company. It's jokingly said, but I think it's such a on point that if people get that mindset that if you don't say that, then you are actually holding back your entire organization. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
And maybe from there, I also, one of the things that I've learned, again, I have been an entrepreneur for 20 years. So what it means is that I have done so many mistakes, and I have had time to learn from them. And one of the things that actually, and that was also actually Patty McCord who told me that, is that one of the hiring rules that I have and that I always repeat to my managers when they come to me with, I have this problem with this person, I'm not sure, what should I do? And there's one question, what she asked me back then, and what I asked them and what I asked myself is that if that person would walk in the door right now, with everything that you know, would you hire that person? If the answer is no, there's nothing to talk about. And I think that was such a good filter that has really, really helped me a lot. Now I see there was a hand. So Anna.
Yep, thank you. Actually, like I'm working in the close direction, sales recruitment, and I knew about Jobbatical for many years. And to be honest, I was inspired so much with this idea of traveling and sabbatical in different countries and so on. And actually, I also saw a lot of media posts that you were growing as hell and you were successful. And actually, there were a lot of this media rush around Jobbatical. And actually, like for me, I was surprised when I one day just entered the webpage and there's totally different thing there. And actually, what I want to ask is, how was it for you when actually outside you seem to be so successful and so growing, and actually inside you saw that there is a problem and actually you have to pivot?
Yeah, it's a good question, and you know what I learned with a pivot is that so first of all is that inside the company, what a relief it was for the team to work on something that works. You see, you have brought together all those amazing people, and then you talk about, I mean, today we have like thousands of relocations per month and we're growing really fast, right? And there you have like 10 people were hired per month, and you look at those charts and you understand that it's not working, but you're trying to cheer people. So I mean, looking back, I would probably should have done this 1.5 years earlier, but you know, we go through the journey, we have to make those mistakes. But it was kind of like today, going and talking to a journalist, like really, Anna, is so much easier, because I mean, my vision is still the same. I mean, we didn't even change our mission, right? Think beyond the borders and help the world to work together, or even the word Jobbatical. And I can happily share also the story of the word, because it's funny how this is even more relevant than it was back then. So why I had the idea of Jobbatical word, yes, Jobbatical, or like job and sabbatical. But what was behind it actually was that, so my thought was that job is this boring thing that people do. You go to your cubicle, you have a boss that most probably you don't like, you have to commute there, you kind of have to do it, but you don't like it. And then you have those dreams, and then you take a sabbatical. You get to take, after like 7 years of work, you take a sabbatical, you go and, you know, live your dream, and then you go back to your boring cubicle. So I kind of, my vision, or my thought was that I think in the future those two things merge. So you can live and work in a way that you actually are living your dream, that you're doing what you love, where you love it, and you're free to actually live your dream. And if you look at the market today, then this is happening already. With the whole talent shortage thing, people get so much more flexibility now. With pandemic, everybody knows that everyone can work remotely. So this word actually is becoming, which was like the future, is becoming now the present. But thank you. I now went a little bit in a rabbit hole, but thank you for the question, and thank you for being our follower. Yeah, it has been quite a journey. Okay, and I saw the in chat also. How did you sleep when your company was running out of money? I must say, and this is so I'm not a coach, but my coach is in this call, so it's kind of this weird situation right now, right? We are in a coaching call. My coach is in the chat. I must say that one of the things that I'm super thankful in the past 4 years, especially 3 years, is that, and that journey I did a lot with Ariane, is I really worked on myself in a way of my mental well-being, my physical well-being, like really started to take care of myself. Before that, I was the kind of person who 5 a.m. computer open, first thing that I do, I start to do emails, last thing I do is do emails. But I shifted that in 2019, and you know, I already mentioned everything going on, divorcing, like you have a possibility to either clean it up or go nuts, right? When you have so many things happening. So I kind of started to clean it up. And for example, in the morning, I don't take any morning calls. From like 6 a.m. to 8:30, it's I do running, I go swimming, I do ice swimming, like all those things that make me happy. Then I take my daughter to school, but like I take this time for myself. And I think to answer your question, Ariane, then the funniest thing is that the hardest year of my life, which was the 2020 and 2021, was also in a way the best year of my life. And I think it was due to the work that I was doing with myself, and Ariane helped a lot asking the right questions. So that's something that I did not realize when I started Jobbatical nor previous companies, that in order to be a good leader, you really have to start from yourself and to really take care of yourself. Okay, any other questions?
Just maybe a minor one. I don't know. I guess it's not a minor one, but just in few words, when you have to let go like 1/3 of a company, and actually it does not matter how big a part of a company, but in your case, a lot of people, right? What was the main criteria for you who should stay and who should go? Like the more flexible ones, like the more fit into to your vision and a company culture, or maybe some other criteria. What it was for you at that time?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. And I think if the first, which was easy one, like we were not doing recruiting anymore, which meant like anybody related to that part of the business, there wasn't a job for them anymore. But the second part, I think, and here I actually do recommend like both Patty McCord's Powerful, which is a really good book. That's a book that I go and back and forth and reread because it taught me a lot about hiring. Because what she's talking also is how they had to let go a lot of people in Netflix, and what it actually did, that you selected the best people to stay, and suddenly you have such a concentration of high performers, and you see how much more you can do with those people. So even though it's the hardest thing to do, and it's a thing that you don't want to do to people, because again, like it's not their choice, it's your mistake, but I think in that sense, the filter was very much who can handle that change, who can drive our change. So you really kind of go into only the highest performers. We should be every day, like we should not have, and I think that's something that now today, 2022, that's something that I've talked with my management as well, is that like as soon as we make a mistake in hiring, you can see it so fast because the bar is so high. You can see when somebody is much lower performer. You can see it because everybody else is high performer. So that's what we should be aiming at. But back then it wasn't the case. It was, was still a learning process. So I don't know if it answered your question, but yeah, in some ways it was actually a good thing to do that filter and then have a concentration of people who have the drive, the skills, and are going beyond every day.
Thank you.
Thank you for a good question. Anybody else? No? Do you want me to tell you the story what happened in Kiev?
Sure.
my worst stage
Oh, yes.
experience, like literally it was crazy. But it's funny because it's the only time I've been in Kiev, and I have such a memory from that. But Estonian president back then, Kersti Kaljulaid, invited me to join the delegation and give an inspiring speech in Kiev at a tech conference. Don't ask me exactly where it was. It wasn't left, but it was one of the centers. So anyways, it was the day, and I said yes because the president is inviting. So cool. And so the president gave a speech and I'm in the audience. I usually don't like to sit in the audience before my speech because I get antsy. I want to walk around. I just want to, breathe, walk around, especially when you have to give a speech after the president. And so, but the setup was that she gives a speech, she stays on the stage, and then I go on the stage, I give my speech, and then I sit down, and then we have a panel together. There was a third person on the panel later as well. So president speaks, sits down, and then now it's my turn to enter. And I looked at the stage, and the stage was very small, and she was a very tall lady and very long legs. So I thought, like, I will not enter from where she is because otherwise I have to kind of awkwardly climb in front of her legs. I will go on the stage from the other side. And so, and I had to hold this. It wasn't this mic, but it was like the mic you have to hold, right? So I step on the stage, and then I'm on my face on the ground, literally like a log, like, and the whole audience just goes, everybody. everybody was listening to me after that. But anyway, so I'm on the ground, like I heard the sound. I'm like, and the next thing I look up and the president is reaching, basically giving her hand and helping me up. And I don't know, but it's the same thing. As an entrepreneur, you have to adapt to any situation. So somehow I managed to crack a joke. And I actually delivered my speech. And again, everybody was listening. Nobody was looking at their phones after that. So I gave my speech, but it didn't end there. So I go and sit down next to President Kaljulaid. She whispers to my ear in English, "Shit happens." And I'm sitting there, we're supposed to start the panel. And then I started to feel that, oh my God, my finger hurts so badly that it's almost like blinding. And what turned out was that I had 3 fractions. So I was taken to the Kiev hospital. And so that's, so I came back like a finger up like that with a, some kind of stick on it. So, after that, I always like to say that if you go on a stage and you're nervous, think about my incident. Like she fell on her face and it still ended up being okay. So the worst can happen, you can still handle it. So that was the story. Anything else?
Great story. We have a question actually in the chat.
You're still working with my brother. I'm still working with my brother. My brother is just the best co-founder. We are like, well, literally, I don't know how we share the same genes because we're so different, but we're so complementary. So my brother is younger than me, 3 years younger. And where I am, outgoing on the stage, talking vision, he's in details, very he has built so many data systems and the spreadsheets and all. So basically he's like, I call him the enabler of Jobbatical. He's always there, he's always solving things and super smart. And we're completely the opposite, but in a way that we are complementing, not conflicting each other. So I'm very, very thankful that because we actually, we did have an experience working together when I was the CEO of MTV Estonia and he was working in MTV Baltic. So we kind of knew that we are okay to work together, but this experience has been amazing. And he will have a very big chapter in my book one day because he's just amazing. Thank you for the question. Hey. And I see that despite of the fact that I haven't been eating since Sunday, things are not that bad. I'm still talking. Okay. So anything else that you want me to share? Because I don't remember where the questions came in, but anything that you want to know? Oh, can you share how you manage being a mom and a CEO and founder? Well, yes, my daughter definitely has a very different mother. And it's not easy. So I see only a few of you, but who has kids? Anyone? Okay, so, and I think this is the hard part because like, I think that's something that Ariane has seen me also in our sessions, that it's the constant feeling of guilt, that you feel guilty that you're not good enough as a CEO because you are a parent, and then you're guilty that you are not good enough as a parent because you're CEO. It's like this battle of guilt, which one wins. So I try to really find peace with it. But I think the things that I'm thankful that I did. So first of all, I in a way trained my daughter from very young. So she has been traveling with me everywhere. Like before Pivot, we had a lot of clients in Asia. Now we're focused on Europe and then US. But so, she was 2 years old when I took her to Malaysia for 3 months, threw her to a local kindergarten and went to meetings. So in many ways, what I learned was that story that very often people are saying that, it's hard to travel with kids, or they are not okay, it's not comfortable for them. It's the way it's the habits. Because for her, sitting on a plane, going somewhere, it was a normal since she was 2. So one is to really, I think, help your child to adapt your life, not trying to shield the kind of poster like you think she or he should live. And I think like when I listen to her, she's 9 right now, like I think that all the traveling, the conversations, all the all hands meetings where she has been, and she very often actually she comes after school to all hands. And since we have, you know, global team from Colombia to Indonesia, some of people are in the office, some are in the Spanish office, some are in German office, but everybody, you have all those people there. And she has started to actually, when I ask, are there any questions, she sometimes raises her hand and asks a question, which is great. And I always give her the mic and I listen to her question and I answer it. That it actually develops her to be part of the world. So it's not, it doesn't have to be so separate. So my daughter comes to my office when she's with me because I'm divorced. And we have 50-50, which means that she has 2 homes, very loving homes, and parents get along very well. And it seems she's really good with it. She's very proud of both of her parents. Both are CEOs as well. So she's like, I'm very curious to see what she will be when she will grow up. But I think the main thing is that to really, I mean, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy, but I think kids are much more adaptable than we think, and let them be part of your life. Did that answer your question, Ariane? How do you manage anxiety for doing something you have never done before? To be honest, I think this is, I love the anxiety. The anxiety, you know that there's this, have you seen the picture? That comfort zone, and this is where the magic happens. You know, there's comfort zone and this is where magic happens, and that's so true. An example I can share, and this is not from work, but this is from my hobbies, is that in 2020, I think it was, or 19, 19, yeah. A friend of mine, or actually downstairs neighbor, had asked me so many times, come to try wake surf. You know what is wake surf? It's where you surf behind the boat on a wave, right? And I was so afraid of open waters. This is one of my biggest fears, open waters, right? So finally I said yes, and I went there, and I was like, literally, I was shivering. I had this big vest, but I went there. I did it once, I did it twice, I did it 3rd time. Now I'm a wake surfer. I love it. And so what I suggest is that, and this is something that I've started to build as a habit, is the more uncomfortable it is, the more I push myself to do it. And I'm talking from a fasting camp. I haven't eaten since Sunday, and it's not like something that is comfortable. It's just, you know, it's good for you, and it's actually challenging yourself. So one of the things that helps me with anxiety is meditation, definitely. So something that I really recommend, that I do meditation every morning. I do meditation even before this call, since I felt that my energy is not very high, and that I actually did a session of meditation to really, I do gratitude meditation. I thank for everything, that whatever happened today or what I want to thank for. I do a lot of manifesting. I ask what I want. So I do a lot of internal looking things in order to not have that anxiety, or not anxiety. I think it's okay to have anxiety, not have the anxiety control you. I think that's the issue, where you kind of let it run you instead of just observing the anxiety, right? Did that answer your question? Anything else that you want to know?
Yeah, I have another question, if possible.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I heard you mentioned, and you said a lot of good words about your coach, Ariana. And so my question, as a you know, as a founder who didn't meet a coach yet, and of course we heard and we know of some advices and how it usually happens and where, but could you please tell your story, how it did happen to you?
Yeah, very good question. Because who introduced Ariane was our American investor. They recommend their portfolio companies CEOs to have a coach. And the first time I went to a call with Ariane, she knows it, so I can say it out loud, was that my thought was, I don't need a coach. I don't need a coach. And then we had the conversation, the question that she asked, and then I thought, that's interesting. And that completely changed me and to be honest, like, it's not only, we are humans, it's not only leader and CEO, Ariane is an executive coach, but a lot of our discussions are about life, right? So being a CEO is super lonely. Everybody who's a CEO, has been a CEO, knows it. You have your family, they have, other issues. They see you working too much, or you have your investors, they have other expectations because they want their money back and much more than they put in, right? Then you have your employees, but other than that, and your friends who just don't understand exactly. They can support you, but they don't really understand. So for me, having a coach where I actually feel that I can share all my fears freely, I can share all my concerns, I get back questions that help to, not that I get answers, but I get questions and then I find the answers. So it has been super helpful. I'm really, really thankful. I actually told my investor this summer, this spring, we had after COVID first time like a CEO summit, and I told them that one of the best things besides the, like actually even more than the money, was the introduction to my coach. I really, really recommend that.
Definitely.
So, anything else? It has been such a fun session. Thank you for all the questions, and if anything, I can leave my email. I can't say that I answer fast every time. I will be expanding to many markets in the next 2 years. So we're just closing our funding, but this is my email. If you want to have a sounding board, if you want to ask something, so this is my email. This is my WhatsApp. And nice meeting you all. Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you, and very inspiring. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Zaina, for inviting. Bye-bye. Greetings from Turkey.
Take care.